Hello and welcome to another LinkedIn Live here at our Level Up studio in our London Attensi offices. I'm joined today by an incredibly special guest, Pål Wibe. Paul, welcome. Would you like to give a little introduction of yourself, please, Paul?
Yeah. So as you said, my name is Pål Wibe. I'm from Norway. Basically, I used to be a McKinsey consultant back in the old days. And then after 5 years traveling around the world with McKinsey, I thought I needed a real job. And so I got into retail, and I sort of stayed with retail for the last 27 years. And had the pleasure of working in all kind of industries. So from grocery sector, duty-free, discount variety retail formats, and then the last job was in XXL, which is one of the bigger sports retailers in Europe. So basically we're working with anything within retail.
That's a real cross-section. Yeah. And I absolutely emulate the real job as an ex-retailer. I can definitely relate to that.
Thank you.
So Paul, I know since you've been in the UK very recently that you've been shopping, you've been hitting the UK high streets.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what are some of the kind of biggest standout differences you found between kind of UK and the sort of Norwegian retailers?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of similarities too, so I think that there's a lot in common that you can learn from each other. But in Scandinavia, historically, labor cost has always been high, sort of per employee. So we have always had to invest a lot in getting more out of the resources and the hours we have. So we have spent a lot of time and energy in training and developing our staff, but also in technology and adapting new technology, just because it's so, in the Scandinavian market, labor is expensive. And I think that you see now in the UK market and some other European markets that labor is also getting more expensive. Yeah. So you get a similar kind of pressure, but we are sort of had a little bit of a head advance in Scandinavia on this topic.
Definitely, and I think probably a sentiment a lot of retailers would relate to, that the statement you made around kind of more from less, almost, right?
Yeah.
It really resonates.
I think there's a cost squeeze in the market now, where initially you could pass on the cost increase to the consumers, but now in the second round you cannot really do it.
There's a limit, right?
And then it really hits down to the bottom line of many retailers. So then you actually have that challenge, which is fun but very challenging, which is to get more out of less. And then you really need to focus on your people and the core processes.
Yeah, agreed. Most definitely. So reference next couple of years in retail and hospitality across those operators. What are some of the biggest challenges you foresee?
Well, I think that it is for the next 1 to 2 years, I still think we're going to be in the same environment that we are now, which is really about this cost squeeze and focusing on. You have to. You do not get more resources. It's not the time where you develop totally new concept or totally new things. It's more about having your cost base more efficient. Train your people in the core process and do that with less time and less resources. I think that's going to be the name of the game also for the next couple of years.
Yeah. And I've always thought that retail is all about brilliant basics, right? So you've mentioned that word efficiency a few times.
But you have to drill it, and in order to drill it, it has to be fun, because like training and development is something that people in Scandinavia we are actually doing quite well on sports now, you know, like field and track and I work with a couple of the people who's actually supporting those athletes, and what they say is that you have to do something 10,000 times in order to be really good at something. But to do something 10,000 times, if you're like in retail, I mean, it's not as fun as maybe being a European champion. Yeah. So you have to also make it engaging and fun. So having that kind of combination of training many times on things, but at the same time doing it in a way that you feel like you're doing something fun, that's the challenge.
It's definitely a great point. There are definitely some strong Scandinavian athletes coming to light.
It is actually.
Repetition.
Unfortunately, not in football, but in all other things.
a couple, but
not a team.
Maybe not enough yet. Not yet, anyway. So Paul, you are the chairman of the board of several large retailers. such a huge buzzword. I think on most of the sessions it's definitely been mentioned or talked about, and that being AI. But what advice would you give them reference AI?
Yeah, it's definitely a buzzword, and to some extent you could say, is it too much buzz and too little? But I think that I see that a lot of retailers are now starting to also work with AI, and I think that my main advice when I work with people is to don't make it too big and too complex. It's focusing on the small learnings and build it bottom up and test out what you can do. It's really all about either doing something you do today much more efficiently. So like you develop a training module that you used 10 days to do, you develop it in 1 day or half a day, or you do things that you couldn't do just for cost or it was just too complex before. But don't make it too big. I see a lot of applications of AI in retail, in marketing, in IT, and in HR and training. So my biggest advice is just to get started and not make it too mind-blowing.
Makes a lot of sense, because I think historically myself, having come from some retail brands, if there's and AI is more of a trend. I think it's fair to say it looks like AI is very much here to stay, but. And we've used that word transformation program several times, and it gets used a lot in retail. Is almost what you're saying is don't go too big. Actually, just look at how it can enhance what
step
you're
by
already.
Step. I had this saying that if you become a little bit better every week, every season, every campaign, every year, the beauty of retail is that if you add up, thousands of people who become a little bit better every campaign, every season, every year, it actually becomes big numbers. But for each individual, it is not necessarily like a big jump. So when I started on some of these transformational journeys in some of the retailers I worked with, I was sort of going off very sort of ambitious and said that we're going to be the best discount variety retailer in Europe. And people came to me and said, Paul, I'm just a store employee. I mean, being the best in Europe, I mean, I'm not made for that. But so we then had to sort of rephrase it and sort of said that no, but do you agree that you can be better, a little bit better on what you're doing in each campaign, each season, and every year? And most people agree to that. And as I said, the beauty of retail is that if you sum up 10,000 people becoming a little bit better every day, it's actually quite a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I think as we've previously discussed, right? So if we could get, as a retailer or a hospitality operator, you've got thousands of people working for you, to have every one of those people improve by 1% year on year, what would that mean to your business?
So it's same with AI. It's a little bit of demystifying it and making it much more practical. So how can you're making marketing material for different formats? How can you do that in a quarter of the time that you used before? I mean, it's a simple task you do every week. But if you do that and add up 52 weeks, it's some money. And if you do that in HR and training, maybe used 1 week to make a learning course, now you can just take the PDF, put it into the AI generator, and then it spits out a gamified learning tool in 1 hour. I mean, it's much more fun.
We also talked about the fun element as well, so we're changing that long, lengthy process into something more quick and efficient. So the role of AI in retail, obviously there's definitely a role to play. There's areas it's playing that role already, and then there's the unknown and the enhancements and things you've already mentioned. But what do you think retailers can do to ensure their training programs are aligned to the role of AI?
Well, I think that, as I said, I think it's important to just sort of start using it on either to make what you do today much more efficiently, or to do something which is not really feasible today because of either the complexity or the cost of it. And then, on the other hand, it's very much the same as before. I always said that AI is a tool, it's not a target in itself, and training and development, for example, is a tool to achieve something. So I always like to make the same KPIs and measure it. So if you do training, use AI and test if you can see more effect of it. If you can do it with less resources or with a higher effect with the same resources, and have the same KPI. So when I worked with Europris, which is like a discount variety retailer like B&M in the UK, and when we started off doing seasonal implementation training, we actually we defined some very specific KPIs. That was sort of same sales per customer, per 100 customer in the stores, and said that when we have done this training, you should see an effect on sales per customer. in these stores.
Yeah, makes sense.
And the funny thing was that the people who trained the most, the stores who trained the most, had the biggest effect. So we could actually link the training to the effect. And it's the same now with the AI, that if you do introduce AI in the tools and you don't do it with less resources or a higher effect, I mean, then you shouldn't do it, because it's not a target in itself to use AI. It's only if you do things better or less expensive.
And then what you say makes a lot of sense. And actually, Paul, was one of my questions I was going to ask you is around, can retailers actually measure or see KPI improvement? Can we measure that through training? But obviously, you've mentioned some.
I think so, and I think you should measure things. I mean, because then you know that you can actually invest more in it. So, as I said, this seasonal implementation program that we did, we measured same sales, store sales, and sales per 100 customers, just to make sure that all the training we did, that it actually had an effect also on the top and bottom line. I remember we introduced like a new branded pet food supplier, and of course we wanted the store staff to really know about the product, to be able to sell a premium product. And again, you can measure, the ones who do the most training also do the biggest sales increase. And of course, then it gives you confidence to be able to invest more in. So then we did it in flowers and sort of farm products, and you could roll it out also to other categories.
And actually, just on a side note, the seasonality for a lot of retail and hospitality brands, seasonality short, sharp, and very important. So the setup of that is incredibly measurable, right?
Yeah, that's another thing is onboarding. Like all retailers, some have more and have turnover, so you always need new staff. If you can onboard your staff in half the time and maybe reduce turnover, I mean, it's so valuable. I mean, how much money do you spend on getting new people and training them, and maybe you're losing some of them because they get frustrated because they don't know what to do. If you can train, and you can have some KPIs that measure where you get it, I mean, that's hard money actually.
But also, we'll go back to that fun element of the Pål recruitment team that have got constantly recruit as well. Yeah, absolutely. Changing direction just ever so slightly, Pål. So, reference continuous improvement. So, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the most successful strategies you've used for continuous improvement?
Yeah, as I said, I think the most important learning I had is I call it the little bit better philosophy, that demystify becoming a little bit better and sort of make it very practical, very small steps. That means that everybody can participate and everybody can also commit to doing it. Because I think not everybody can say that I can be the European champion, but everybody can say that next season I will, and my store will do a little bit better. So we did that with multiple retailers, and you can use the same methodology on campaign implementation, seasonal implementation, and in general on store implementation. And as I said, the law of numbers in retail is that you add up a lot of small things and it becomes very, very
definitely, that's just unbelievably so. And I think, as mentioned a few times now, that question of can you do a little bit better, it's very rare to come across anyone that's going to say no. The answer is
I cannot,
going to be yes, right?
So. But can you be the European champ? I mean, that's a hard sell. Even some of us will get motivated by it, but that's not for everyone.
Would I love to be? Of course.
I would love to be too.
absolutely. Yeah. So, Pål, any advice you'd give to any retail or hospitality operator regarding the next couple of years? We've talked a little bit about the challenges you anticipate, but what advice?
I think it's going to be a tough market. So I think that getting more out of less is the kind of overall theme, and I think that's easy to say, but very difficult to do. But now you also have some new tools like AI and other technology that you can actually do it. So like, I've seen training programs that I know we physically spent weeks developing before that we now can do in hours. That's doing the same for less. And then you can also do more for the same. So I think that definitely doing that is one. The other thing is just focusing on basic retail operations. In a tough environment, it's not the kind of time to develop totally new things. It's more about saying, what are you doing a lot of today? How can you do that better? So core operations, everything with the store operations or order replenishment or anything, sales, the sales situations, the sales dialogues, the things you do every day in all sorts, so that that if you can improve it, it really matters.
Yeah,
not necessarily developing the new product that in 5 years is going to be like fantastic.
Yeah,
that's a little bit too
it's
long
not always
term.
the big things,
the focus
right?
is more now on
Yeah.
what are we doing a lot of and how can we do that better.
I might be showing my age a little bit, and I know there's definitely going to be some people watching this that it resonate with. But for me, detail is always retail. Retail is always detail.
It is. It is. That's this little bit better. Also, it's a
Yeah.
variant of that. That's what I like with retail. It's not really like, you could say it's not sophisticated in a way, because some of the things we focus on when I go into a store, it's like, I think you would laugh at me if I told you, but it's a sum of these small things adding up.
Yeah.
And that's, I personally find that's why I've spent 27 years in retail. It's probably because I find that so enjoying.
Agreed, and definitely resonate with that.
Yeah.
Paul, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
We've alluded to, so that 1% better. So if you are watching this live or on record, if you have questions for Paul or myself, or you'd love to get in the driving seat of any of our simulations, please do reach out and connect. Any comments, any feedback, any thoughts, please share, but we look forward to seeing you again really soon. Thanks again.
Thank you.